I'm going to do today's session is all about employee status, and the stuff that you're going to do in the next few weeks is going to be about employee status. But I'm going to use the blacklisting story as an example of why it's so important, really. So it's almost like a case study of why employee status is such a big issue in British employment law. I'm going to do the first session, and then when you break for tea, JJ's going to come back and do the rest of the session. I don't intend to do an entire presentation on all the history of blacklisting or the blacklisting story, because I'm sure a lot of you have heard it already, and I'm sure JJ's sort of mentioned it in what you've done already. But I'm going to do a little bit in order to sort of make people understand. I'm going to basically pose some questions from it, and so we've got a very short video. We've got lots of videos in the blacklisting campaign. If your union branch wants to get more active and wants to get young people involved a bit more, get them to make campaign videos for you, because some of these young kids make brilliant young videos. I couldn't produce any of these things, but we've got young kids who do them for us, and there'll be people in your union branches who are very good at that. They just need the opportunity and the sort of encouragement to try and do it. So I'm going to show you a very short video. Then after the video, I'm going to run through some of the legal stuff that was, the blacklisting story is a big story, but it can be put into small compartments, and one of the compartments is the legal stuff, and this is the employment law course, so we can stick to the legal stuff, and then I'll pose some questions afterwards about it, if that's all right. Okay, here we go then, let's see this. Just to explain, we'll do the video first. Very quiet. How does that work? Hold on. You're going to have to suffer it. You're going to have to suffer it at full volume. There we go. That's better.
The police, the state, and multinational construction companies conspired to stop trade unions trying to improve health and safety on building sites.
All of the institutions of our state have utterly failed, and I am utterly ashamed to be part of a state which has allowed this to happen.
On thousands and their families, and I'd like to see some of these faces.
We need a proper inquiry into the disgraceful practice of blacklisting.
You can go to jail for 2 years for hacking somebody's phone, but in the case of blacklisting, there is no imprisonment and there is no sanction.
Building witness sent to prison.
I got 6 years. Tessie Morton got 9 years. Where are you now? Asking for justice.
They're blacklisting people, not because they don't like your faces, but because they're scared stiff on collective bargaining.
I got dismissed from the Olympics for blowing the whistle on the blacklist. The man in charge of industrial relations at Crossrail was a senior man in the blacklisted organisation.
There weren't just construction workers, academics, lawyers, journalists, environmental activists were on those lists. There's information on those files which could only have come from police officers.
Identities that were created by the state for the purposes of spying on people.
I know Robert McAlpine fears a hateful conspiracy trial.
Every trade unionist has a right to organise, but we're not going to do it, whether they like it or not.
Right. First of all, I'm contractually obliged by my publishers to hold up the book every now and again. So during the course of the discussion, I'll be holding the book up and saying, "Oh look, available in all good bookshops." That's that. Yeah, just as I said, some of you, you've probably all heard the story about blacklisting before, but just to sort of put it in sort of context. Every trade unionist, anyone who's an active trade unionist, knows that actually, if you stand up for your rights and stand up for your fellow workers' rights, sometimes it affects your career prospects. I mean, the likelihood of being promoted, is sort of reduced somewhat if you're an active trade union member fighting for your members' rights. So, I mean, it's well documented of people being overlooked for promotion or being victimised in the workplace or people being sacked. Lots of unfair dismissal cases for trade union activities, which is actually one of the things they call automatic unfair dismissal. If you're dismissed because you're a trade union member, that's automatic unfair dismissal in the law. Well documented. And one of the things that trade unions have said over many, many years is it's not just that we can't get, it's not just that the one employer doesn't like us. When we're sacked, very often, our activists find it difficult to get jobs in other workplaces as well, in the same industry. The difficulty is when you say that, it's very difficult to prove it, very difficult to prove it. And whenever we used to say it in the past, the employers used to accuse us of being conspiracy theorists. What are you talking about? How would someone possibly know that 5 years ago, in the other side of the country, that you was a shop steward somewhere, or you was a safety rep somewhere? You're completely paranoid. This is nonsense. And the Blair government, a bit of history, but the Blair government actually introduced, put a white paper before Parliament in 1999, basically saying that they were going to introduce a new set of regulations called the blacklisting regulations to outlaw blacklisting in this country. They went out to consultation, and because all of the big companies said, "Oh, blacklisting, this is complete conspiracy theory, there's no evidence to prove it at all," they didn't introduce the law. They wrote the regulations. The regulations, you can go back and read them, what they said, but they never actually implemented it. So they did the consultation, but after the consultation didn't implement the regulations. And this sort of backwards and forwards of unions complaining about it and the employers saying it doesn't go on has gone on for decades. And until in 2009, there was a bit of a breakthrough. In 2009, the Information Commissioner's Office, people probably heard of these, they're the government department, the people who work, they're all civil servants, they're in PCS. The Information Commissioner's Office, they're the government department that looks after the data protection watchdog. If you're in breach of the Data Protection Act, they're the people who go and investigate it. They did a raid on a small office in the Midlands of an organisation called the Consulting Association. No one had ever heard of this organisation before. If you Google it, there's not a single entry about this organisation before 2009. It had been in operation for 16 years. No one had ever heard of it. What's going on? And when they went into the office, and the office is smaller than this room, half the size of this room. When they got there, sitting on the table, they found basically secret files that big multinational construction companies were keeping on shop stewards and safety reps and union activists in the building industry. And they seized them. There was 3,213 files that these companies were keeping. And if you worked in the building industry, and if in the past you'd complained about unpaid wages or had been a shop steward or something like that, and you think you're on this list, because the government department has now seized all the files, you can actually apply to the government, the RCO, and they'll send you a copy of your file if you think you're on it. This is my one. Okay? So this is what construction companies were keeping on us for. Mine's not the biggest, not by a long way. This is what the construction companies were keeping on us. So sometimes it's articles from Construction News or articles from the Hazards magazine or Labour Research, where I've been quoted in it or something like that. This is the first one, 1992. This is when I lived in Dagenham. It's got my name, address, national insurance number, my telephone number. It's got the car registration I drive, and this is the very first thing that I'm put on it for. Involved in a dispute to try and make the contractor take responsibility for non-payment of several weeks' wages. You know, so because we had this was on the A406, so the North Circular Road, the Hanger Lane. Where the Hanger Lane roundabout is, they were building that back in 1992, and because the workers had been paid for several weeks' wages, we dared to have a dispute about it, and that was what was added, what got me onto that blacklist file. Since then, there's just more and more. Anyone in here a safety rep? Anyone in here? Let's see if I can find the safety rep stuff. That's my safety rep's credentials. When I was elected as a safety rep, my union, which was UCAT, sent my safety rep's credentials to the company. They photocopied it and added it to my blacklist file. So just for being elected, you know, I mean, the idea of getting your credentials is meant to be that you get certain legal rights, obviously, to go and investigate the workplace. This one is three separate lots when I've been elected as a safety rep. This one's even still got the company office stamp on it, where they stamped it and sent it off to my file literally a couple of days after being elected as a safety rep. So what's meant to give you these legal rights ended up getting you added to this file.
Why did they raid the ICO?
Why? Oh, that's very good. Because a group of workers up in Manchester, a group of electricians up in Manchester who were union activists, literally every job they were going on, they were sacked after 1 or 2 days. And they went, this is just so obvious, this is blatant that there's blacklisting going on. You know, it didn't matter where they were in the country, they were being got rid of almost instantly. Even when they were still taking, the jobs were still taking on another 100 electricians, these 3 electricians couldn't get the job anywhere. So they went on, they had a dispute after being sacked in one, and they were on the picket line for 3 years. 3 years in order to prove a point that this, and they've said, I mean, I've interviewed and we interviewed in the book Steve Aitchison, Graham Balker, Tony Jones. 3 years they were on that job, on that picket line. And they said, we know we're being blacklisted, this is going on, it's outrageous. And they took an employment tribunal, and by some complete fluke, one of the managers who used to do blacklisting turned whistleblower and came and gave evidence in their trial. And gave them a witness statement saying, yes, this is this genuinely has been going on. I was one of the people who used to help compile the blacklist, and they end up winning their employment tribunal. And then, I'll hold up my book again. I'm Dave Smith. The other bloke who wrote the book is Phil Chamberlain. Phil Chamberlain's investigative journalist. His stuff's in every newspaper in the UK all the time. And he wrote an article in The Guardian about this dispute in Manchester, and basically said, look, blacklisting does go on. Here is an example of it. Interviewed 3 or 4 people who, who clearly been blacklisted. Went and interviewed the bloke who turned whistleblower. Gave the article. The article about a double-page spread in The Guardian when they run it. Almost vanished. Nothing was happened. That was in 2008. But one of the PCS members up in the Information Commissioner's office read the article and took it into work the next day and put it on the table of the bloke who was the head of investigations for the ICO. And he read it. His name's David Clancy. He spoke at our public meetings a few times since. He's an ex-copper. When you see him, he looks like a copper. So he's done, and he basically said, well, if this is true, then it's a breach of the Data Protection Act, and this is my job to go and investigate it. And they spent about 6 or 7 months getting warrants and chasing telephone numbers and forcing British Telecom to give them information that they didn't want to get them. And then finally they went in and got the raid, got the warrant and broke in. So that's a story. So as I say, there's 3,200 of these files turned up, and then and they just report everything. I mean, there's stuff in there where I complain about the toilets overflowing. Seriously. There's stuff in there where there's leaflets I've given out about asbestos. That they literally, this is an official union leaflet about asbestos. UCAT leaflet, but they photocopy basically saying this is the kind of thing he's given out on building sites. There's stuff in there about my brother. who's not a trade unionist. There's stuff in there about my wife, who's not a trade unionist. And when you see the files, some of the files, it's just little bits of tittle-tattle, or it's you've been a shop steward and there's been a dispute about unpaid wages or health and safety. So quite a lot about safety. Safety reps seem to be victimised disproportionately amongst the group of workers. And if all they were doing was sort of keeping files on you, it would be a little bit sad.
Sorry, Dave, I was just going to ask, just say for instance the Hanger Lane thing that we were getting about here.
Yeah.
Say you went for a job the other side of London.
Yeah.
How will they find out that you?
Oh well, here we go. This is the mechanism, because to be honest, when I was a young bloke working on building sites, when the old fellas used to tell me about, I've been blacklisted, I've got to be honest, I didn't believe them. If I'm being perfectly honest, I was quite sceptical because I worked for small little subcontractors, small little agencies, and very often the firm I worked for didn't even have a proper office. The bloke could turn up on the building site on a Friday afternoon in his Mercedes and pay people out the back of his car. That was the level of their organisation, and I couldn't work out how he would know, or someone else would know, that I'd been on a dispute, in Hanger Lane in 1992. How would they work out? Well, so when we found this is the other stuff they found. They seized the files, but when they seized the files, they also seized. They had a constitution. This organisation. They used to meet once every 3 months. All the people who used to meet would be like the senior directors of the companies. Would attend the meetings. But what they also found is like invoices and all the financial stuff. So how it worked was this: every time there's 44 companies involved in this, and the 44 companies are the 44 biggest construction companies pretty much in Europe. So Robert McAlpine, they built the Olympic Stadium. Skanskas, they built the Olympic Media Centre. Kiers, Carillion, Tarmac, Balfour Beatties, Costains, all of the big companies, Vinci, all of the big companies you've heard of. Very often nowadays because of privatisation, they're now infesting the public sector as well. These meetings they used to do, you could only attend the meetings if you was at director level of these companies. So we're not talking about 1 or 2 rogue managers at at bottom level having a chat with people in the pub. It's once every 3 months the directors of multinational companies used to meet, around the country, and then when you see the financial accounts as well and the invoices, what happened was every time someone applied to get a job on one of their building sites, what they would do is they would make a list of all the new applicants and fax the list through to this organisation, the Consultant Association. The Consultant Association would then go through the names and the national insurance numbers and check to see if your name was on their database. And if it was, you'd get a telephone call back to the director, basically saying, oh yeah, Dave Smith, his name's on the list, Jonathan Jeffries, his name's on the list, whoever it happens to be, and then basically, a day later you'd be sacked, or if you was applying for the job, you wouldn't get the job in the first place. And they used to record it all, so some people's files, a page after page of applied for a job, was name checked, turned down, applied for a job, name checked, turned down, literally page after page of this stuff. To give you an idea of how it works, every time they checked a name, it cost £2, and they used to get invoiced at the end of the quarter for how many names they checked. It got closed down when they were building the Olympics. As I said, Sir Robert McAlpine built the Olympic Stadium. Their last invoice in that year was £28,000. Once again, we're not talking about quiet words in the pub. We're talking about organised, systematic blacklisting in order to keep trade union activists off of their building sites. And of course, if you keep safety reps off of building sites, the people who are prepared to say, well, this is unsafe, well, inevitably you end up with, unsafe building sites, which is one of the reasons that, the construction industry's got such a terrible safety record. It's not because it's the most unsafe. There's plenty of industries that are equally unsafe, but because, the safety is, petrochemicals or nuclear industries are much more, potentially unsafe, but because they have got a better culture to do with safety, then it's taken into account more. Whereas if you raise concerns, in the building industry, especially if you're from a union point of view, you're almost certainly going to be sacked and not get a job in the future. So, here we go. Sorry, that was a long-winded one. So we've got to this situation where in 2009, in the middle of 2009, if you knew your name was on this list, or if you thought your name was on this list, you could apply and they'd send you a copy of your file in the post. So in the middle of 2009, end of 2009, pretty much there were hundreds of people with these files landed on their post. So this is an employment law course. What do we do? Do you think this is evidence of wrongdoing?
Yeah.
Yes. In order to take an employment tribunal claim, what do you need? You need evidence, and also they need to have broken the law. You can't just speak to people treated badly, they need to have broken the law. So, come on, you're an employment law course, you're in fact it's an employment law diploma, you know, so you're already, you know, quite a high level in UK employment law from a trade union point of view. If these files are coming through and landing on your doorstep, and you know, we're having meetings with the unions and all the rest of it, and you have to fill in an ET1 form and fill it in, what do you think we should complain about?
Data protection.
Okay. Come on, other people.
Dismissal.
Okay, so unfair dismissal,
Victimisation.
victimisation, data protection. Anything else?
Is it breach of the health and safety regs 1977?
Yeah, health and safety work. Could be the Act 74, or could be safety reps, safety committee regs 1977. Okay. Anything else? Go on. I'll be honest, when they came through, we threw the kitchen sink at it. You know, we could, anything you could think of, because this is quite rare, this stuff doesn't come up very often. So anything, when people are filling in the tribunal forms, the ET1, you've all seen an ET1 form, haven't you? How you fill them in online. JJ will show you that at some point. You know, there's a box in it which says which piece of law have you broke, and because we weren't quite sure, a lot of people fill it in themselves. We just threw everything, anything we could possibly think of, we chucked at it. I mean, my own one was about 4 pages long. You've only come up with 5 things. Come on, a few more. Come on.
For discrimination?
Discrimination, yeah. So it could be the Equality Act.
Where does it come under the Equality Act?
Well, potentially, what people were arguing was that it was religion or belief, because we all tend to be quite left-wing. You know, they weren't. You know, I mean, it wasn't. You know, the activists who they got rid of, you know, it wasn't just random. It was like if he was on the sort of left of the political spectrum, he was much more likely to get sacked than otherwise. Others?
Breach of the Human Rights Act?
Human rights.
Freedom of association?
Yeah, Human Rights Act. You know, the Article 8 is the right to privacy, which, you know, they've got stuff about my wife and my brother on my name and national insurance number. Article 11 is the right to freedom of association, the right to belong to join a trade union. You know, seems to be a slam dunk, these sort of stuff. Okay, so as I said, what actually happened was lots of people filled in these employment tribunal forms in. We all sent them off, and anyone here been to an employment tribunal? Been through an employment tribunal process?
I've been to the
I've been, but I've never been through the process.
Okay, maybe.
No, because my tribunal works slightly different to that.
Okay. The what tends to happen is you fill in the form,